Welcome to the MuseCast, where we squeeze every last drop of inspiration out of Sunday's sermon.
You better, you better. Thank you, Dan. My Tuesday is not complete until Dan. Whew, that's it right there. Happy Tuesday. Or, as has so adorably been coined, Happy Muse Day.
Happy Muse
Day. Did you see?
Yeah.
Happy Muse Day. Yeah, in the chat, someone. So we have Muse Day, we have Shadanigans, and we have
the Sermery.
The Sermery, and we have Nugget Time. We are like formulating our own little language for the MuseCast. It's so fun.
Out of control branding. I mean, the branding is just yes.
Out of control. All right. Well, Dan, I want to start off by very publicly, and by publicly, I mean whomever tunes into the show, saying, I mean, honestly, dude, bravo. Like, you guys, high five this man, because it is yes, he's in this stuff. You know, he's helped craft the series, but he's also like, you know, looking toward Christmas in that series. And he genuinely thought he had a few days off. He thought he had a few days
I did. I totally thought I had all these plans of leisure. It was going to be great. I had all these visions of 2 days of with feet up, with a beverage, with just not thinking about anything, and just being a vegetable for a couple days. And and then that happened. But you know that's opportunity knocks. So
that's right. The best laid plans of mice and men.
Yeah,
there you go. If only you could have called someone else to fill in for you. I'm sure they would have jumped right.
The body of Christ. Lean on one another, right? Lean on one another. Let's see.
I don't know why you didn't do that.
Yeah. So I did, in fact, text my dear friend Shawna. But Shawna was not available, so she was out of town.
She was being leisurely. She was out of. Well, she was kind of being leisurely. She was out of town. She was visiting her child who abandoned her for the state of Illinois. So, come on now.
Get some family drama there. So for sure.
Absolutely. All right. Well, seriously, well done. Maybe moving forward, you just need a good little 24 hours.
Right. Yeah. It came together good, but here's the weird thing about it, and maybe this is part of why it did come together well, is like I felt like I was not in the moment when I was on the stage. I felt like I was kind of out of body, and I don't know if that's what it's like when the Holy Spirit is involved or not. I don't know or if it's just fatigue, or I don't know what it was, but and so I didn't feel like I was in control of it. And so I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but I know that I like to feel more like I'm in control of my content, but it worked out, and I'm very grateful. And I do, like I said in the sermon, part of the reason why, you know, I was kind of like, I had these days off planned, but part of the reason why I also got so excited is because I just felt like this is so important. And like, I felt like the seas parted, and here's this opportunity to share this important thing. And so it really did. It was really, I was really glad I was able to share it. And I hope that Greg gets better and comes back. But eventually, yes. Yeah.
Well, yes, he is going to get better, and he is going to come back. He just may need a little bit of a time to get over this. I don't think, Dan, you should continue to pray for his misery and that he stays sick, so you get more I don't think that's the kingdom thing to do.
Hey, like I've said before, I like being backup quarterback. That's great. I'm not, I like being number 2. That's awesome.
That's good stuff. Well, it was awesome. You did a sermon entitled Rolling Stones.
Yes.
A lot of play on those words, but it was actually very, very good and very relevant. The title fit the sermon. And so I'm going to turn the wheels over to you so that you can do the world famous summary.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, I don't even remember like the structure of the sermon or anything. I just know like some like big picture stuff. Because
Yeah,
it was
remember,
sort of like a blur. But
yep. But
I
you confess to watching serial killer documentaries.
yeah,
So
that's right. Yes, yeah,
I don't know if we
yeah.
need to talk about that a little bit or
Yeah, yeah. It's cool though. Brian Zond actually replied to the Woodland Hills Twitter account for my sermon, because it's called Rolling Stones, and he's like this classic rock wonk basically. And he replied with "Start Me Up." That's what it said, and that's like a Rolling Stones song. I don't think Brian Zond actually listened to my sermon, and shame on him. That's what I would say. Shame on him. So I would love it if he did. Both of us are big Bob Dylan fans.
no
But
doubt,
yeah,
no doubt
I,
that'd be fun.
I did call this Rolling Stones, and um, I thought that it would be more obvious why I called it that, so I might have to explain that. But it was not about a rock band named the Rolling Stones. If it was going to be about classic rock, it wouldn't have been about the Rolling Stones. It would have been about Bob Dylan, like a Rolling Stone. That's what it would have been about. So, for whatever that's worth. But yeah, so we talked about this a little bit last week here, where I've been really kind of very intrigued by, well, the book itself, the book of Revelation itself, is just very intriguing. But in particular, as Greg has been talking about Christ's transcendence and God as the I am and all of that, up in the air stuff, I've just been like marveling at just the range between God being the I am with the unspeakable name and the ground of all being and all of that very abstract, out there stuff, but then also being this vulnerable lamb that is fluffy and temporary and is here and gone like that, and just that theme in the scripture of this God who created the universe by his word, but then also you can hear him rustling in the trees, and he comes to say hi to Adam and Eve, and you've got the Yahweh, the unspeakable name, but then you also have Emmanuel, God with us in this little baby, and just that in well, theology, it's called God's transcendence, is all that abstract stuff, and his immanence is his very near presence and his right there with usness. And I think that's just amazing that God is on both ends of that. And so I was thinking about the fact that, in a much smaller sense, humans also have a range like that, where we're definitely immanent, where we are the created thing. But at the same time, we also have something that's sort of transcendent about us. We have something more than just the immanent. And I mean, yeah, we're made from dust, but God also breathed his spirit into that dust, and so forth. And so Paul tells us to regard no one from an earthly point of view, because we are more than just this earthly substance. And I just think that's interesting. And so now, as we come to this passage that we're in, chapter 1, verses 4 through 8, I was struck by this statement that we are called to be a kingdom, in particular, a kingdom of priests, and just how God has always wanted us all, each of us, to be priests, that is, people who do things in the world for God, or the way that Paul puts it, to be Christ's body in the world, his hands and his feet, whatever however God would want to interact with his creation, we are to be the conduits through which that happens. And that has been the case since the creation, where God saw his creation, said, these guys, this is going to be my image. This is going to be my avatar, my presence in the world. And then you see, when he talks to Moses, he's picking up that same theme. He's like, I'm trying to make this kingdom of priests out of these people. And of course, the whole time they're making these idols to other gods. And so they're totally, they're missing the mark in a big way. But, the loyalty of God, he continues to strive for that priesthood of all believers. And that the role of priest, of doing God's work in the world, of being God's presence in the world, and helping to help people see their own transcendence and their own otherness and their own unique sacredness, is so important, that I feel like that is just this primary thing that Satan goes after. And the primary way that I see Satan going after that is creating hierarchy, where not everybody is not a priest. It's just some special people are. And that, I think, thwarts the whole thing, because we're supposed to be a body where we all work together. Instead, we end up with these hotshots who sort of run the whole show, and there needs to be roles, and people have different responsibilities and stuff like that. But man, we end up really exalting some people over others, and we end up striving for like strange perfectionisms at the exclusion of togetherness and all that kind of stuff. And every church struggles with this, and we struggle with it. Everybody struggles with this, and but that's, I think, the challenge. And you see Jesus going after the Pharisees and the teachers because they have this hierarchy, and even the disciples again and again, they're like, who's going to be the greatest in the kingdom? Which of your disciples will be, the best? And Jesus is just like, I don't believe this. I mean, you're right here with me and you're struggling with this. Imagine Dan and Shawna and Greg 2,000 years from now. I mean, it's a real struggle, but it's important, because there's something important about all of us being God's hands and feet. And part of the struggle is that people don't want that responsibility. We want other people to do it for us. And that's another part of the challenge. And I talked about some other stuff about sacerdotalism, which is a really great Pictionary word. And that's just this, when churches become hierarchical and there's special people who are in charge of the sacraments, and that's where sacerdotalism comes. I've also heard it pronounced sacerdotalism, which I kind of like because it's got this kind of sassiness to it. But, I think it's technically sacerdotalism. And then so what I did is I just, challenged us, myself included, to ask, are we really living out our priestly calling? And I think a lot of people didn't even know that God considered them priests, because we've grown up in this culture where there are the religious leaders, and then there are all the people who sit in the pews, and so we don't really think of everybody as a priest. We think of certain designated people as priests. We've kind of let the occupation of priest kind of dictate what the role of priest is. And the fact is that we have people who are priests as an occupation, but in reality, we're all priests in our lives. And so I just called people to think about that. And what that means, and I think Peter says this great, is that if you're a priest, that means you're a living stone. You're doing stuff. You're working with your hands. You're doing what God would want to do in every moment and in every situation that you're in. And so you're thinking about all of your interactions and all of your experiences through the lens of, what does God want to do in this moment right here? And so you're alive, you're living, but you're also a stone. You're a foundation. This is what God is building his whole plan on. And so that's where this kind of rolling stones comes from, is that you're moving, you're doing stuff through this lens of being a priest, but you're also the foundation of what God is doing. And all of those grandiose big things that God wants to do in the book of Revelation, it all hinges on these little local ho-hum churches. And that's because it's all done through his priests, and that is where the priests are, in these churches. And there's some other stuff here, but I think that's sort of the gist of it. And I gave some examples, because if you are a priest, if we are a priest, if I'm a priest, well, then I have to know what my job description is. And the job description is sort of spread all over the place, because it's a complicated job. It's a complicated job being God's hands and feet in the world, because there's an enemy that's always trying to thwart us and setting new traps and new ways to try to tear it down. And so you have to be nimble, and you have to kind of always be learning and always be growing in agape love. And so I shared some examples of what that looks like compared to what the world has us do. And yeah, I guess that's probably my summary. There's a lot of other stuff in there that I left out, but that I think I'll leave it at that. That's my summary.
Yeah, that's your summary, not another out-of-body experience. And I will say, I in regards to that, I think that was kind of some of the Spirit coming and just propelling you to say the things without you thinking about it or controlling it too terribly much. Yeah. And it was really, really good. So So I'm really thankful, and I really saw your sermon as we talk quite a bit, at least among the pastoral team, about the invitation challenge that we are called to be presenting at Woodland, and you gave us both invitation to live into this godly calling of being priests, but also the challenge that you're like, are we doing this? And we need to be doing this. And yes, there are those of us who vocationally, that is our job and role to be ministers, but that doesn't mean that we are the only ones. Like, the calling is for all. It may not be everyone's vocation, but that calling is for all believers. And so I really was jazzed by both that invitation and that challenge. I thought you gave really well, really, really well. And I just want to say, we need you. Like, you're right, Dan, and you expressed gratitude for the teaching you've sat under of both Paul Eddy and Greg Boyd. As am I. It is. I am so thankful for our teachers of the faith, especially at Woodland Hills, and you are also one of the teaching pastors. So I feel like, yes, we can honor that and be thankful for that, but we need the rest of the community to fully be and do what we feel God calling us to be and do as a church community, Woodland Hills. And the coolest thing to me is that not only is it in our local area of, Maplewood, Oakdale, St. Paul, Twin Cities, but it's beyond. So we know we have folks that tune in from across the country and internationally. And so that in my brain, I'm thinking, man, we have workers like just all around the world called to do this thing of reflecting God and being his hands and feet. And I consider those folks, wherever you are, like, you're a part of Woodland Hills. I feel like you call us your home, you are a part of us. And so together we are doing this, but we can't do it alone. We need you. And so the body is important. And I loved it. I loved the challenge, but also the invitation of it all.
Yeah, that's, and you're right too. I mean, I love the fact this is part of the scary part. I mean, because the sacerdotalism, the tendency for hierarchy and all of that, as soon as you kind of make a step and grow, then the whole world changes. And so now how do you have that togetherness, and how do you have that sort of mutual kind of priesthood, but now you have this transcendent church experience where you're broadcast around the world, and your content is being consumed by people that are not in your local congregation, and so there's this automatic kind of distinction between the content creators and the content consumers, and there is sort of like this prioritization of content creation, because you can't have content consumption without content creation. And so there is this implicit sort of hierarchy there. And so, but it's a blessing too. So it's this great blessing where you can share with people that are in a way that you're not limited by geographical location, and you can reach places that you can't really reach, and you can share in God's love in ways that you can't share in God's love with just offline, and so and I see so many people who get frustrated with church and especially this hierarchicalism, and they leave the church, and I think that's sad, because I think that it is a real problem. Their criticism is right, but leaving isn't the answer. The answer is, let's try to keep working at this so that we don't end up sabotaging our priesthood because of our technology, because of our circumstance or whatever. And but it's so there's a lot to say there, I guess, but.
Absolutely. Well, and I love a phrase that you repeated a few times is there are no totem poles in the kingdom.
That's right.
And I think we have to intentionally and consistently fight against that. I think it is part of our nature. And then especially those who come from a more liturgical background. They're probably looking for like the one, the one that they can go to, and they, they can confess their sins to, and that they can get prayer from, and know that that person's hearing from God on their behalf. And I'm not poo-pooing that. Like I said, I think we all have a role to play, but we have to fight against that totem pole mentality, that hierarchical mentality, because I've never seen, and I know I'm not like ridiculously old, but I've been around a minute. I've never seen that work out well, where there is a singular person holding all of the answers, the power, the influence. That does not work out well. And so I love the communal aspect of it. You also talked about what it would look like for us to be priests, not exhaustively, because that'd be impossible, but some of the spiritual practices that we can be participating in, because I think that's people's question. Like, well, what do I do? Like I work at Cub Foods. Like, how am I a priest? Oh my God, that's amazing that you work at Cub Foods. Thank God we've got a man on the ground in Cub Foods. That's perfect. Or a woman, you know what I mean? A person, a human on the ground in Cub Foods. But yeah, acts of love, praise and thanksgiving, to be living sacrifices, to build one another up, to tear down divisions, striving to be sincere and blameless, and like just owning up to stuff, and living a life worthy of the gospel, and letting our gentleness show. Those are just a few of the things that you presented. Like I said, it wasn't an exhaustive list. That would be impossible to do, but I thought those are some really good starting points.
Yeah, I love the Cub Foods example. Some people might not know what you're talking about, because Cub Foods is
true.
It's a grocery store here in the Twin Cities, and it's like this big warehouse, and it tends to be like their goal is to offer low cost, stuff, groceries. And I actually worked at Cub Foods for a short time, and
of course you did. Of course you did.
I was on the clean team. Clean up on aisle 4. Yeah. Clean team to aisle 4, and I would go there, and the olive oil would be burst all over the place, and I would get there with my mop and my broom, and it's a good place.
Perfect.
It's a good place.
Perfect. For my Texan friends, you know who you are. Think HEB. Think Buc-ee's, even like Buc-ee, like, but Buc-ee's is more convenience. But anyway, yes. So Kroger, just think along those lines. That's what we're talking about.
That's
Cub
good.
Foods. Dan, I don't know if you even know, because like you said, this was a very whiplashy, quick turnaround situation for you presenting this sermon. But is there anything that you left out that you would love to share with the MuseCast people today?
Yeah, well, there is. There's actually a bunch of stuff I cut, mostly because I felt like I wanted to offer those kind of discipleship kind of options at the end, to kind of just paint a picture of to get a sense of what it looks like to be a priest versus what the world offers. And so I did cut out a couple reflections. Really, I do. If this is really intriguing to people, Greg's sermon, I think it was 2016, 2015. It's called "The Priesthood of All Believers." You can just search for that on the Woodland Hills website, and it's a great sermon. He really looks at how this kind of view of that we're all priests is really sort of the foundation of what Jesus is going after. And he talks about how Peter gives this confession, and he says, on this rock, on this confession that you have one priest and you are all priests, on this rock, this is what I'm going to build my church on. And he does a great job of unpacking that. But really, for me too, I thought about, how it doesn't look like this is working in the world. It doesn't look like the priesthood of all believers is accomplishing what Revelation says it's going to accomplish. And I just think I agree with that. It doesn't look like it a lot of times, and yet it also didn't look like God was winning when Jesus was being flogged and put up on the cross. It looked like the whole thing was falling apart on God. And in the same way, I think of how, I was just thinking, what did Pilate and the high priests do that afternoon when Jesus was on the cross? And I just imagine, the high priests going back to prepare their prayers for the temple. And I imagine Pilate, eating some grapes and sharing a joke with a guard and just going about their lives. Like that was like Jesus was just this little speed bump in their way, and they got rid of it. And just because I imagine that, because I just see that. I see the smugness of power and just the shallowness of self-righteousness and all of that. And I just see it all over the place. And so I know what that looks like. And yet I also know that Jesus, speaking of rolling stones, rolled the stone away and came out and overcame death. And in the same way that the resurrection showed us that the foolishness of the cross and the apparent total devastating loss at the cross was actually this profound victory. I think the same way when the parousia happens, when Christ is revealed, when Christ appears to us, I think it's going to show in a similar way that building this kingdom on these living stones, on this kingdom of priests, was actually very brilliant and beautiful. And so that I just keep thinking of that in terms of like steadying myself in the sense of the feeling that God's losing, the feeling that it's not working, and all the self-doubt that kind of creeps in when you see what's going on in the world, and that the church just seems like a speed bump. It doesn't seem like it's making a difference at all. And for me, that really keeps me encouraged to keep pursuing this priestly life. And so yeah, I ended up cutting that out, but I did want to communicate that, and that's why it's great to have the MuseCast. We can still share that.
I know. We're so lucky. I bet every church wishes they had a MuseCast.
Yes, they do.
One thing I want to point out is that we many times will take questions that have been either emailed into us or that we notice like on the YouTube chat during the sermon or something. And we're always asking for that. And so we're so thankful for that. But lately, Dan, people are sending stuff in, but it's not questions. It's just statements of gratitude and appreciation for your sermon. And so, buddy, you're mucking up our process. We need questions, not comments and adulations and thank you so much and blah, blah, blah.
I like those too. I do.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, I'll just say this too. I was like really unsure on Sunday, and I didn't feel like I had clarity on the sermon. And really, like in the last 15 minutes before we started our service, I had 4 different people in the congregation come up to me and say things to me that were so encouraging and just like so perfect to what I needed to hear. And I'm so grateful. So yes, definitely we want questions, but man, I appreciate the encouragement too. So
no, absolutely. And I am so kidding. I will say that, anytime we hear or see or read a comment or, a statement, or someone says something that is encouraging, that shows that what they're hearing and learning, along with us is helpful to them, it is just such a blessing. And you guys, we're like on the stage, like Dan said, under the lights, but that stuff is helpful to know that that connection is happening. So thank you for your comments and your encouragement, and thank you for your questions.
Yes.
And one final thank you, bravo to Dan Pence for his sermon, Rolling Stones. And I am going to ever so smoothly lull us into the transition to nugget time.
Nugget time.
Very good.
All right.
Nugget time. Nice.
All right.
All right. But since you were preacher man, you get to choose. Do you deliver your nugget first, or do you close out the show with your nugget?
I'll go ahead.
Okay.
I'll start. I have a poem to share, and this is also from Rilke's Book of Hours. And but let me say this first. You'll notice that I'm wearing our Sustain shirt,
Yes.
and so definitely get a Sustain shirt. It's really comfortable. I because the sermon is called. Do you have one yet?
How? I don't have one, Dan. How could I get a
well,
Sustain shirt? How could they get a Sustain shirt?
That's a good question, and you would think, since I was wearing this, that I would know exactly where to go to get it. But I know that if you go to whchurch.org/bulletin, you'll probably get a link there. Otherwise, you can just go to whchurch.org, and there's probably a link there on how to get one too. But it definitely, if you join our Sustain campaign and you or change your giving, you can get a shirt that way as well. But otherwise, you can just buy one. But
Wait. You're just rolling over this.
Oh yeah, I'm rolling stone here.
For Sustain, if you would like to contribute like on a regular basis to Woodland Hills and the things that we're doing, sign up for a schedule, then you get a Sustain shirt for free. Yeah. We're not trying to buy your offering. We're just rewarding your offering.
That's right.
If you are already on a schedule, as many of you are, and you adjust it or change it because you prayerfully considered that and want to do that, then you too will get a Sustain shirt for free. However, if that's not what you feel led to do, that's okay. You can purchase a Sustain t-shirt. And like Dan said, they're very comfy. Mm-hmm. He's worn it twice now that I've seen him. Yeah. So I think that's a good sign.
Yeah. It's this is Zoom, so you can't smell it, but it's probably due for a wash. It probably is. Well, and since the sermon was called Rolling Stone, Jeff, who he's sometimes he's live with us on YouTube at 4:00, but he definitely emails and he comments on the YouTube during the sermon. But he called my brown coat, he calls it brown sugar, and I really wanted to wear that because brown sugar, Rolling Stones, But so good. But I wore this instead, and this is really it's very flexible. Like I could do yoga in this, so it's been a good shirt. Anyway, back to nugget time. Hold on, let me get. I need to get reoriented into nugget time. Woo!
Yes.
All right.
Nugget time. It's the perfect shirt to do nugget time in, and yes, we're back.
And we're back. All right. So this is the poem. There's no title. Well, there is a title, but it's in German. And I don't know. I can't read German. It says this. Only in our doing, Lord, can we grasp you. Only with our hands can we illuminate you. The mind is but a visitor. The rational mind thinks us out of ourselves. Each mind fabricates its own journey. We sense its limits, for we have made them. And just when we would flee those limits, you come and make of yourself an offering. I don't want to think up a place for you. I want you here in my presence. Speak to me from everywhere. Your gospel can be comprehended without looking for its source. When I go toward you, it is with my whole life. And I just think that reminded me of Romans 12:1, where we offer our entire selves as a living sacrifice to God, and we do things. That's where God is illuminated in us, when we're actually being His hands and feet in the world. And I think that just really resonated with me. So that is my nugget.
I love it, Dan. Great nugget. And I'm a little nervous because I feel like in this moment we're kind of starting to share a brain, and I don't know if that's a good thing. And I say that because my nugget is a prayer, but it's very much along those same lines of your poem. So we're going to go with it. All right. I know. So the title of my prayer is not in German, so I can read it. It's called A Temple of Love. Abba, resting in your silence, I began to see and feel that my heart is a sanctuary of your everlasting spirit. A shelter for the Most High, a temple of love. I began to participate in the sphere of wisdom, opening me to further depths of your truth. I am a humble body, yet imbued with the music of your grace. It is your Son who is my hymn sung through this particular chord of embodiment. The tune resonates in the central chambers, a tympanic cadence leading me back home to you with every beat. Amen.
Amen.
And I thought that that prayer perfectly encapsulated the essence, the vibe of your very, very wonderful sermon.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's great. And we are thinking closer and closer and closer. And you know what? Barbara and I actually thought of you. Barbara and I found we found a new show from the 70s that we might start watching.
What is it? Tell me now.
I can't. All right, I'll tell you.
Okay.
We're thinking.
Okay,
We're
tell
thinking
me,
about.
tell me.
We're thinking about maybe watching the Rockford Files. So.
Talking about. Right.
That's so funny. You got so excited. You broke the range of your microphone. You totally muted out because you were so excited.
Oh, goodness. I love the Rockford Files. Yes, Dan and Barb. Come on. It's a happy train. Just get on. It's fine. It'll be so better than those, serial killer documentaries.
Yeah, definitely.
That you were checking out.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. All right, you guys. That is it for us today. We literally love interacting and doing this with you guys. We are learning to love together, and the way it plays out here on the MuseCast is just a gift. So thank you for tuning in, and thank you for your questions and your comments and just being a part of this motley crew. Not a classic band, but an 80s hair band. We encourage you to continue to tune into this series. It's going to keep going until we transition quickly for Christmas, but it's going to be good stuff. We're thankful for you. Thanks for tuning in.
Yeah.
Have a great week.